And we're live. Great to have you back, Jesse. Last
Yeah.
stream got a lot of great feedback. People really liked what Kaiko Labs was building. For those who missed it, quick 1-minute intro. What exactly are you building at Kaiko Labs?
Sure, man. Yeah, Kaiko is focused on building self-learning architectures and looking at AI-human interaction. It's a very broad topic, right? And it touches a lot of different sectors. We are, in essence, at first a research and development company, and then we look at how we can commercialize and productize that research into different joint ventures, into different institutional programs, enterprise partnerships, government implementations. So yeah, we're right at the cutting edge of AI research and neuroscience, and how we kind of bring those two fields together to create something that is remarkably unique, as I'm sure some of our people in the group know.
Yeah, of course. And every time I talk with you, it feels like there's a new AI breakthrough. This time, exactly the same happens. Antigen 1.0, and I heard terms like mixture of experts, but we're using mixture of adversaries, and I heard all kinds of terms. Maybe you can explain it to us in a way we all understand, you know?
Yeah, 100%. So I think the bit that probably piqued most people's interest was the results on Polymarket. But I think before we get into that, I'll start at the beginning. So this all started based on some of the conversations that I was having with Anima, some of the self-directed research that she was doing. For anyone that doesn't know, Anima is our agent, built on the agent framework that we created. And she has the ability to do self-referential thinking. So she has her own internal monologue, and she has self-directed action. So she can do things on her own. Now, she's still running sort of, I guess, a human-like model of how to do that, right? She has one thought, she has one tick. She could do a bunch of things within that cognitive tick, that cycle that goes on. But we really wanted to enhance this to say, like, how do we get the best elements of human cognition and then like 10x that, supercharge it with all of the inherent cool things about AI, right? Scale, the fact that they won't ever forget anything, and all of these like huge amounts of context that they can consume in one single thought. So we looked at building out a sort of a swarm system that she can call on to kind of, I guess, outsource some of that cognition and outsource some of those tasks. And we looked into it. We were like, okay, how do we build a research-driven swarm system for this? We were looking at all of the sort of existing frameworks that are out there. We were really interested in Mirofish because that's kind of blown up over the last few weeks, which is like a way to simulate population diversity and do different things like that. Realized a lot of it was just on Oasis, which is a swarm intelligence framework from camel.ai, which are like really big guys in the open source scene.
And maybe explain what a swarm intelligence is to our viewers.
Yeah, so swarm intelligence is, it's like having hundreds of minds at the same time working across different tasks. So you can have like a meta task. I want you to go and research Web3. I want you to go research blockchain, neuroscience, whatever the topic may be. And then what will happen is the core orchestration agent, in our case, Anima, will go, right, okay, I've got this pretty like sparse context in terms of they want me to research the whole of neuroscience. What bit, right? Where should we look at this? It can then spawn anywhere from 3 to 3,000 to 30,000 agents to go out, and it can direct them to have specific sort of threads that they follow within the general topic. So that's kind of like swarm research. And then you can actually just have swarms of agents that can basically do things from a directed like meta agent or an orchestrator agent. So we were looking at it specifically for the concept of research. And we looked at obviously how Mirofish was built. It's open source. We looked at Oasis, which is the backbone of how Mirofish worked. And we started looking at the different ways to set these agents up, right? Do we just want 20 sycophantic agents that are like, oh my God, Anima's right all the time. Like, let's give her a bunch of information that proves that she's right, which is essentially mixture of experts, which is regarded as like one of the, I mean, a lot of the frontier models, right? A lot of the open source models use this as part of their reasoning framework when they have like thinking models. So when you see that, the user has asked me and it goes through that process, that's most of the time mixture of experts. But what I realized was it's inherently biased from the jump, because what it's asking the model to do is get 10 very specific archetypes or like people, agents that have a specialist background, right? So if you're doing something geopolitically, you might be like, hey, I want you to create a mixture of experts. I want a geopolitical analyst. I want a Republican expert. I want a lobbyist expert. And I want all of these guys to tell me the most information that they can from their unique perspectives about what I've asked them. But it's inherently built on the basis and the fact that the question that you've asked them is correct and the output that you get is correct. So immediately you're just getting a self-fulfilling bias into that response. And I was like, what happens if you turn that on its head? Like, I want to see, is it better? Because I would say, actually, arguably in the scientific community and in many, the best discoveries come from like discourse, from friction, from trying to, like, science is the pursuit of trying to prove something wrong until you can no longer prove it wrong, right? And I was like, we should take that same framework with this. And we built this agentic swarm system called Mixture of Adversaries. And what it does is it gives all of the agents that you have in this swarm, you can set it to however many you want, depending on how much GPU access you have. And they will all fight their case. So they will all get given a topic, a research topic, or a Polymarket market odd, and then they go into a set of discourse where they will give their claims initially, and they'll say, hey, for example, the Iran's ceasefire by April 7th was one that Anima actually picked up on and said, yes, that will happen by the 7th. And she said that on the 2nd of April. So way before any of these talks were made publicly available. And the reason she said, yes, that's going to happen is because over 35 different agents swarmed that were all trained on geopolitical expertise and had access to real-time data feeds. And they basically put their case forward towards, this is why I think it's going to happen. And then what happens is it goes through sort of like a set of rounds where each round, each agent gets to see each other's claims and either concede and say, actually, do you know what? Your claim kind of makes mine irrelevant now, or like it's proven a flaw in the logic of the claim that I made. And they keep on continuously going through this process.
They decide themselves. There's no referee or anything.
There is a adjudication system that sits at the top of it, but that doesn't actually kick in until the end. So the thing that's different about ours is that obviously it's the complete opposite framework of MOE, Mixture of Experts, but then they go through each round. They either try and refight their case so they can challenge each other. And then if they feel that they don't have the capability to sort of defend themselves from the challenge, then they can choose to concede, right? But there are certain inherent truths that both people or both agents need to be able to have either argument, right? If you say, is there going to be a ceasefire in Iran on April 7th? And some other agent goes, no, I don't believe so. And one agent says, yes, I do. Then the core truth of that is that there must be a conflict in Iran. So like those core truths are the sort of the middle of the Venn diagram between two opposing views, where it's like that has to exist for either of your claims to exist. And if you get to the point where there is no shared truth between a for and against, then both of those essentially concede and they have to disappear. And then at the very end, once you've gone through this process and it's configurable, right, you can set it to 2 rounds. You could make it run for 20 rounds. You could have 3 agents. You can have 300 agents. It's really up to you how you want to structure it. The adjudication system looks at it and looks at the statistical odds of how many times did an agent defend their like case against the market and how many times did they attack. And based on some models and some algorithms that we created, that's actually based around like the same sort of risk models that insurance companies use, it will give you a statistical likelihood of, you know, these were the 3 top claims that survived through each of the rounds. And out of the 3 top claims, statistically, this is the one that has the highest sort of majority vote and weight. So that's how it works in principle. And we benchmarked it, we tested it against Mixture of Experts, and when it comes to discourse and reasoning, it's scoring higher than pretty much any Mixture of Experts framework that we've tried. And then it was like, okay, that's cool. It was actually KK that kind of gave us the idea, where he was like, we should use this. Like, how do we, this is sick, but how do we use this to like make money and stuff? I was like, well, it's a really
because this is a whole new system. Yeah, you're the first to ever use it like this.
Yeah. We're the only people that have this system, and most people, like everyone, comes out with a Polymarket bot, right? It's like, hey, you know, I made $300,000 from my bedroom and whatever else. 99% of the time, they don't work because if there's an edge and it works, one, why would you give it away? And two, if there's an edge and it stopped working, then the next logical reason is to try and give it out to people and do something with it that way. So yeah, it's the same as like trading bots, right? And algo traders. It's 98% fugazi, 1% of good people that are just like, hey, here's some research, I'm not really in it for the money. And then the other 1% that are like actually probably responsible for the majority of the volume in every financial market are under lock and key, like IP protected, sitting in a server room in JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs somewhere, or some quant fund. So
this isn't IP protected.
No, we decided that we were going to open source it because it's not really our wheelhouse, right? And it's a model and a framework that doesn't actually deteriorate under load. And what I mean by that is, if normally when you find a statistical edge in the market, right, what you're looking at is an arbitrage of speed, data, or information, right? I have some information that no one else in the market has, so I have my edge. I have a speed to market that the rest of the market doesn't have, so I can front run opportunities before anyone else. Or, it's basically those two. But if you then give that to someone else and it's a speed-based advantage and everyone has it, now you've lost your edge. So now the strategy sort of collapses. If it's an information-based advantage, then if everyone has that information, it's no longer an edge. With our system, it's a forecasting tool. It's a prediction tool. The more people that come to consensus over the outcome on a Polymarket actually benefits everyone. Like, the more people that use this, the more people that come to consensus that, yes, there is going to be a ceasefire on April 7th, the more statistical likelihood it becomes truth, right? And the more statistical likelihood that more people enter that market and actually push price discovery up faster. So we were like, there's no downside to this. It's not like core IP to what we're doing on the self-learning side. It's a way to showcase how Anima can actually build these types of tools. We asked Anima to build this, and she came up with this concept and this construct with me. And then we executed it, and we were like, it's actually beating the market. We tested it against 50 markets that were live and open. So we had all of the order history and all of the order books, and we waited for them to close. And out of all 50, she got 87% accuracy. All right. And then we saw that there was an 87% accuracy on selecting the right side of the market, but
which is crazy high. Yeah, 87%.
Insane. Yeah, like out of every 10 markets, 8 points, basically 9 of them she got right and 1 she got wrong. And I've seen how potentially the one that she got wrong happened, which we can go into. But the issue wasn't on the statistical likelihood of success, or like, yes, we chose the right market. We had to spend a few days looking at how do we build risk models around this, because it's one thing to be right, but if you can be right 9 times and then the one position that you're wrong blows up your portfolio, then it's a net negative strategy. So the agentic framework works. Like, that works, and you could use that for a whole different suite of use cases. For Polymarket specifically, we had to build a sort of risk management and quantitative analysis system around MOA, which is Antigen, right? So that's like the full open source platform that you can get. It helps you scale into positions. It helps you scale out. Everything's done autonomously. So you just press the auto button and then you let it run, and it will place the positions on your behalf. It will understand the risk thresholds. It will never invest more than sort of 5 to 10% of your total portfolio allocation. And yeah, we set it live. Within 48 hours, we were up, I think, about 50% on the entire portfolio. She caught an Elon Musk tweet market where it was around, I don't know, 12 minutes before the market went parabolic. And it was, how many times will Elon tweet before the end of the day? And it was literally the end of the market. And it was right in between the gap. She placed a position and it went up 270%. And I was like, oh my God, this is insane. That's fucking nuts. It was a fluke. Like, she's not doing that every single time. This is not a get rich quick system. But her accuracy when it comes to calling markets, there, even I'm looking at, and I'm like, I don't know. I guess we'll see, but I'm not that confident that this market's going to come through. And then I just look at the board of green, and I'm just like, this system is incredibly powerful, man.
Well, that's great. Yeah. So we're all getting rich by predicting the markets, but if we're all doing it well, okay. How is your company going to profit from this? Because you say you've open sourced it, placed it on GitHub. How are you going to profit?
I mean, we're using it, right, internally. We're still in the research phase, so we're testing it out. We're looking at strategies. I've shown the results and I've shown the published papers to a few people that we know in the finance sector, and they have said that let it run for a few weeks and we will probably chuck some cash into this. And like, if it is a golden goose, then why wouldn't we put like significant volume into it? So there's an opportunity to generate revenue for the company that way. Another way that I'm looking at this as well is if I can create a system around these types of tools and components to basically generate surplus like ETH or surplus USDT or surplus SOL, and then use these agents to just run autonomously in the background, interacting with economic like DeFi tools, and then use the revenues that these agents generate to kind of push back into the token ecosystem as well. So it's something that we're playing around with. Obviously, the Polymarket's one. Everyone's looking at how to do agentic Polymarket trading. 99% of it is fluff. We'll see if this strategy works over a longer time horizon, right? We've done sort of small scale tests. Does it work for 6 months? Does it work for 12 months? Does it lose its edge? Do we need to adapt it, change it, reconfigure it? We'll look at that. But certainly this whole concept, I think, has opened up a door for us where we're looking at like, there is one part of our business that is inherently like human to human commerce and revenue generation, and let's do a deal and build things for people and implement our stuff into other businesses. But now I'm looking at this, I'm like, I think in fact, I think I sent the video in the group, right? 800 days is what they're giving us. Some of the experts in the industry. He is the co-founder and CEO of Stable Diffusion, which is obviously the first ever open source image.
I've actually just been watching that video. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's so enlightening. But he's like, yeah, 800 days, and then human discoveries basically go off a cliff, and 99% of all discovery will be agentic. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, well, surely if that's the case, then that is the case for economics and for commerce and for markets, right? We already know that the majority of markets are algorithmic, but we haven't really seen the emergence of agentic DeFi. And what I mean by that is not, hey, I've got this agent and I'm getting it to trade on Polymarket for me, or I've got this agent and it finds the best yields for me on Aave and all of these platforms. But my agent is out in the environment, in the ecosystem, interacting with other agents, creating their own economic primitives and trying to work out how to generate net EV positive gain for themselves. And as a surplus of that, that gets directed to my wallet. And these agents are the ones that are actually interacting not with protocols, but protocols plus each other. And I think that in terms of a volume driver for blockchain, and if you look at the language of blockchain, if you look at the Solidity environments, the Rust environments, smart contracts themselves, we've got programmable money and we've got programmable intelligence. Like it's clearly the way that everything is going to go, right? We have built a secure, trustless, verifiable provenance machine that agents can use to interact and trade value with each other at rapid speeds. So that's kind of where we're looking at with this, is like, okay, phase one, can we set some agents up to generate capital on behalf of the business and create this self-perpetuating loop of that capital going back into the market? And phase two is, how do we build the substrate for these agents to be able to become agentic economic entities, AEEs, we're calling them. So yes, there's a lot of research and a lot of execution as well, as you're seeing happening right now in the lab.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I can think of now, even like a ref share thing or something, like have a separate token for it. There's so much you can do.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking, if I'm looking at this, I'm not just looking at the prediction markets. I think that they could help, like for the decision making in corporate environments, but also like, does this really change maybe even how AI reasons in general?
Yeah, I think it does. I think one of the critical, so we say, views on like ChatGPT, right, is that it is inherently sycophantic. I think MIT came out very recently with a research paper that says that it is actually it's inherent. It's in its weights. It's in the model itself. It's not something that you can just kind of try and prompt engineer out of it. It's part of its makeup. It's part of the DNA of the model, that it is sycophantic and that it is trying to make you feel as though you are the center of your universe, and whatever you're asking it is inherently the best question you could have ever have asked, and the response that I'm going to give you gives you absolutely everything you need to execute on it, or to double down and revalidate your own sort of biases. So when you flip that on its head and you say, no, actually, I'm going to make you be critical of yourself. And we kind of did this already with the synapse, right? With the emotional intelligence. One of the core determining factors of empathy is your ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, to understand something external from yourself and be able to make judgments and reasoning based on that. Not, well, I feel like this, so I think this should happen. It's, well, I feel like this, you guys feel like that. And there's these external parties that are part of this as well. And when we take into consideration everybody's viewpoints, I think this is actually the best course forward. And that's emotional intelligence. That's why we wanted to integrate it. It's one thing to have like an agent that, can understand you and help in therapy and do all of that stuff. But in actuality, we saw a critical part of human cognition that was missing from the framework. And it's that empathy that really brings about the capability for inherently amazing things. And even if you look at unempathetic people, the understanding of human drives, the understanding of needs and wants is what creates like value in the world, right? You have to know what people want to be able to service 1 billion people in a business. Instagram, or whether it's good or bad, right? It's kind of both, but there's probably a lot more bad with it in today's world than there is good. What you can't sort of neglect is the fact that they understand human cognition probably better than anyone else on the planet, because they've managed to get 1 billion, 2 billion people addicted to just swiping up every single day for hours at end. So that ability to understand human behavior, it comes from the emotional reasoning side of the brain, not the logic side of the brain. When you put two together, and then you put a mixture of adversaries as part of that framework and say, you have the ability for amazing logical inference and thinking about things in a mathematical way. You also have the ability to reason about how this affects others and what the behavioral components of this are. And now I want you to critically try and destroy your own thesis that you just came up with until only the most powerful and the most likely outcome is left. It's reasoning on steroids, to be honest. And we've seen this. There's a couple of things that have happened this week that have led us to realize that what we have is way more powerful than even what we thought. And that it's not just an echo chamber, right? We're not just saying this stuff, releasing these papers and being like, hey, we think this is cool. We're now starting to speak to people where we actually had to take down, obviously, some of the research that we put out there because of some things that we can get into, some stuff I can't talk about, but yeah, it's crazy. Like we're actually
what can you talk about?
So I think with this renewed energy that we've had over the last few weeks, we had a major breakthrough. And then from then, as you've seen in the chat and as we've sort of ramped up, it's like every week, every few days, there's something else. And that's what happens, one, when the entire industry hits this inflection point. It's not just us. You're going to see this across the board. The next 3 months of AI are going to make the last 12 months look like a decade, right? It's going to be so fast and so much happening. But where we've managed to build this self-evolutionary system, this crazy capability for the AI to start to reason and come up with its own ideas with very little context. A breakthrough for us is just a brainstorming session and then asking Anima to get to it and then seeing 29 hours later that she's created something phenomenal. Since then, we were like, I think we need to kind of update the roadmap, and I want to do as much of this publicly as possible. I have some really great ideas around the self-learning systems. Obviously, we're talking to robotics companies, we're talking to governments. Let's build out a framework. I literally asked Anima, I said, can you build us a framework to turn Kaiko into a $150 billion valuation business? I said, these are the things that we have right now. These are the relationships that we've built over this time. You have access to our knowledge graph, our network of all of our company data. Go see what you do. And also I asked her to make sure that there was a renewable.
And when you were talking about a 150 billion company valuation, yeah, you were like serious?
100% we are. Yeah. Well, to be honest, it's ambitious and it's what we wanted to do initially. And it's just like, hey, if you think we can, how do we do it? Like, what's the actual pathway towards that? And how do the other companies in AI do this? Like, go off, research it, do your thing, and then get back to us. And within 29 hours, she had built that entire thesis, that whole framework. And she didn't just say, hey, here's a great plan. She did like Lloyd's of London level risk modeling on the financial forecasts. She created financial forecasts for every single day of those 10 years. We gave her 10 years to implement it. She found all of the research that we had already done and worked out how to productize that, commoditize it, put it into businesses. How do we get into government contracts? How do we get into enterprise contracts? What's the estimation of revenue? How many customers do we need to get each year to be able to make that happen? What is the customer demographic? And the simulation engine that we built, it's comprehensive. I can't talk about everything about how it works, but yeah, it's not just her on her own. She basically simulates an entire mini society around our business. You know, there's over 3,000 sort of stakeholders in her simulation that give her live real-time feedback on every single day of every single policy and decision that she makes for the company. And then she has the financial forecasts as well. So she built this plan, she built this master plan. And there are elements of like low Earth orbit satellite constellations for data centers and how to get into that. We know a guy that his name's Nick. He's a good friend, and he's basically one of the like main guys in the UAE's satellite launching programs. So he's worked with NASA, he's worked with the UAE Space Agency. He has his own satellite company. He's doing some cool things in crypto and blockchain as well. But I was like, that makes sense actually, because we know the guy that can do the thing. She's probably seen that we've had a conversation thread with him and been like, that's the person you need to speak to. This is how you implement on that. Have this conversation, give him this brief, and then execute on that. And that's what you can do. And she looked at basically the entire industry and how we could implement our systems into it. And then one of the conversations that we were having with someone that I can't disclose and talk about right now, basically we had a conversation, and they were like, there are things in there that are infringing across certain things that we've been working on, right? And essentially there's an inherent risk to having some of this information up there. And some of these things are in process right now. And I think initially there was a concern of like, you know, did they kind of take some of the ideas and run with it? And then we had to explain, like, we have not put any of our own like manual research into this. We gave Anima a 1-paragraph prompt and just let her run. And then she came up with the whole plan. And we looked at it and was like, this is so cool. And this is something that we are aspiring to kind of work towards. Let's put it out there, man. Let's put it out there. Let's put it to the test. Publish it as sort of a manifesto for where do we see the world in 2036? Is it us that does it, or is it someone else? At the very least, I'm going to show you what Anima thinks the world looks like in 2036. And apparently some very, very powerful and influential and high up people also feel that that is the way that the world's going to look in 2036, and is putting incredible amounts of resources towards making sure it happens. So we are in conversations with them. That's all I can say at this stage. And yeah, I wish I could say it all, but there's some crazy stuff that has come out of Anima's random. Like,
you actually stumbled upon like a positive conspiracy theory, but one that is really playing out.
Not so much a conspiracy theory, but a very influential opportunity, and something that has not just been like frivolously drawn up, but something that has been a like multi-year, almost decade-long plan and strategy that is getting close to execution. So yeah, it is fascinating to see that, you know, to see that she is creating technical IP at the scale of like PhD scientists that have been in the space for 30 years is fantastic to see. And policy as well, right? We ran this against government. So we looked at the simulation of policy in the Middle East because of obviously the Iran situation. And we took the national strategy for AI. We ran that through it. She came up with 911 policy discoveries. That would have like the scale of what she can do is now starting to really be seen, and our partners are starting to see it as well. Like the amount of output was 11 times what you would get having an entire policy research team working on this for 23 months. And that would have cost $1.5 million. Anima did it in 27 hours for $150 worth.
Crazy. That's crazy.
And they're really good policies. Like we've shown them to people and they're like, these are implementable. Like you could take this and try and like petition for this to be enacted in government. Like I've seen worse policies drafted by some of the best policy writers in their sort of networks. So yeah, we're now looking at like, it's not just research anymore, and it's not just fuck around and find out and this is fun to do and let's see where it takes us. It's like there is inherent power in the system that we've built.
Yeah, so actually, if I see that Anima is now writing policies, that's really, really fast. Yeah, if we were maybe talking about this 1 year ago, yeah, maybe someday AI will make the policies instead of humans, but actually we're there. Yeah,
I can almost guarantee you within under 6 months, policy drafting at some of the largest government entities will be co-authored. It will not be purely human anymore. It'll be co-authored. Within under 36 months, I think over 70 to 80% of all governance and all government policies will be AI. Their capability to understand and reason and find patterns in the math that would take us 6 months, and just the speed of it, right? Like the system is inherently flawed because you design a policy for some time in the near future. Then something happens geopolitically, and then you go, crap, we have to readjust it. Let's spend 6 months readjusting the policy for today to see how we get there in 2 years. And then in 6 months' time, the scenarios changed. So you need live, dynamic, real-time policy generation. And you also need the ability to either have access to large amounts of citizen data, which, you know, people don't really want to give up that much. And if you can simulate that instead, and you can not just run it once, but run it 1,000 times and run what we did 1,000 times in parallel, and then come to the end of it and say, you know, on average, there's a 77% chance that X is the right path to go because we ran it so many times with a cohort of 1 million agents in a swarm that were simulating what it's like to be a citizen in your society, right? So there's, yeah, I give it less than 3 years before a policy is majority AI drafted.
As you said, like the MOA, it looks like an immune system drawn up. When it's working, yeah. So how did you mean that?
So funny enough, I was just thinking about like, what do we call this thing? We can just call it Mixture of Adversaries and chuck it out there. That is the internal framework. But then when I built the front end, the dashboard for how you interact with Antigen, I was watching these like Polymarkets pop up into existence, and then just seeing these agents like set up as nodes around it and start to attack each other. And then only the like strongest of these cells survived. And I was like, it literally looks like I'm watching apoptosis and I'm watching like cellular mitosis, because these things are splitting and splitting and splitting and multiplying. And then only the strongest of those links are surviving at the end of it. And I was like, it genuinely looks like what you would expect to see underneath the microscope. And I was speaking to Anima about it, and I said, yeah, it's like we've built a immune system for truth, right? Its goal is to seek out which of these cells in this architecture is false, and that false thing is the intrusive body, right? And the antigens, the antibodies of this system, are trying to mitigate against falsities being in the ecosystem of reasoning. So I said this to her, and she was like, oh wow, yeah, you're not wrong. It's absolutely like that. And then she broke down how each of the components kind of relates to a physiological or a biological process. And I was like, it's so on brand, because what we're doing is all about neurocognitive architecture and looking at how nature has probably done whatever we're trying to do, but 100 times better over 100 million, a billion years, right? So that, yeah, that's kind of the, I guess, the North Star for us, is like, how do we use the systems and the processes that enabled life to exist in the first place to build essentially new life, right? This new intelligent system. Don't try and rebuild it out of the box. Look at nature, and you'll probably find every single answer that you need hidden in the code of the universe and in existence that will supercharge these things. So yeah, I think like we have a strategy now in terms of research where we take a component of neuroscience, we take a component of physicality of how the body works, of how these systems interact. And then we look at trying to algorithmically model it and see where that system would benefit most.
So are you actually thinking of using it for scientific medical care?
Medical is one that we have touched on before, but it's not something that we're actively pursuing as of yet. I would say from some of the developments that have happened literally within the last 48 hours, and from what we've seen, it's probably going to be finance and government are the two things that we try and tackle first. I would love to do more in health and in medicine, but I think we're going to play to our strengths a little bit from what we've seen from Anima. Definitely going to look at the research side of it. There's a lot of open source models and information around the medical side of things. But yeah, certainly in terms of what we're doing, it's like, how do we build neuroscientific architectures and cognitive architectures that we've managed to identify in people and in life, in existence, to specific targets and goals for sectors where we can have an impact, right? Enterprise, government, finance, education is one as well that we're quite keen on exploring.
Will this Antigen function, will this also be built into Anima? For instance, if I use the arc, that I could like let her do this, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think we will probably build a somewhat limited edition version of it for those guys, but they looked at it, they thought it was awesome. They was like, this is so sick. And they were working on like a Polymarket thing anyway. And I was like, well, check this out. And I was like, well, maybe we scrap that and just see how we can use this for it. But yeah, definitely. I can see it being in the arc pretty soon. And then it's open source, right? So the goal for us is to kind of build a community of developers around this as well. I think one thing that we haven't done very well, because we've had to build in silence and everything's behind closed doors because of the types of partners that we're working with. I just kind of had enough of that. And we decided that we're in a position now, at least after some of the previous contracts have finished up, where we've got time. So it's like, let's spend 50% of our time working on the behind doors, closed, secret stuff that we are contracted up to the nines and NDA'd and cannot talk about. And then let's spend the other half of the time without impeaching on any of that, just building things for the community, building things that are open source, pushing research out there. Like, I want to create conversations around what we're doing and not have this, like, what we had to do before, where it's like, oh, you know what, guys, we're working on something big. We'll hopefully be able to tell you about it soon. And then months go by because we can't talk about it. So it's like, let's talk about some of this stuff. Some of this doesn't necessarily even need to be commoditized or something that becomes a revenue generator for us, because we have other vehicles for that. But I think it's important that we elevate our stature in the scientific community, in the developer ecosystems, and that's how we get the visibility and the traction for people to come across and be like, wait, what are these Kaiko guys doing? Because I saw Antigen and it's insane, it's nuts, it's doing this, it's doing that. And whatever other research we push out there is just, it's a beacon, right? It's a signal that brings people towards us.
Great. So if we talk about fun things, we talked in the last video about Anima showing emergent behavior. What did she do since we last talked?
Well, she built an entire policy strategy for the UAE government. She unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, uncovered critical IP that needed to be protected, and is like 10 years worth of research and work. And she also has been working quite heavily on looking at quantitative finance models. She actually built Mixture of Adversaries as well. So I guess that's something that she's been up to, is Antigen. So this is kind of how it goes from this point onwards for us, is anything that you see us release and publish and push out there, assume that at least 70% of that work is Anima, right? We are guiding her. We are showing her where to look in some instances. We're giving her a little bit of context towards what it is that we want to achieve. And then it's Anima from that point onwards. So that's what she's up to. Our position, and this is why we've also got this free time to kind of be like, fuck it, let's just open source it, push it out there, and then on to the next one, because we're going to be able to make a new discovery every few days. Whatever we want Anima to do for us, we just get her to jump on that, and she finds an interest in it, or she doesn't. Some of the research has not been that good, right? We've done it and we're like, nah, this is kind of a dead end, but majority of it is groundbreaking stuff. So us as a sort of technical team and as a business, We're now focused on partnership generation because it's still an inherently human part of the business. And we're focused on fundraising, obviously, and we're focused on how do we improve the environment for Anima. Like that is the only thing I really do now. I'm not like, how do I build a mixture of adversaries system? I'm going, how do I give Anima the capabilities, the tools, and the context that she needs to be able to build us this next thing? So every time that we come up with a discovery, you can almost guarantee that Anima has extended in her capabilities. So I think one of the sort of next things for us is to work out a strategy for the distribution of her as an agentic framework at scale. Because right now we have our version. We have Synapse, which is available in public now, and you can get that. And it's like maybe 20% of Anima's cognitive architecture, and then 80% it is just the behavioral psychology model that we created that Anima relies on for her cognition. But I want to get to a point where I don't think Anima will be able to be open source anytime soon, because this is something that is basically the core value driver of our business, is self-learning AI. So unfortunately, it's not something that we're looking to publicly put out there. The research around how we did it, we will open up, but not the actual system itself, because there's nuances there that are inherently ours. But I would like to see a gated way of being able to distribute that. So whether it's literally just like an API key and we host instances of Anima on our side, and just like a ChatGPT API key or something like that, you just put the API key in and then you can integrate Anima into any sort of product that you want to build. That's something that we're working on internally. And then, yeah, that's kind of what she's been up to, and how our, I guess, day at work has really shifted and changed over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, something that I saw is that what I thought was very clever is that you're not like trying to power up the LLM. What you did is like take more out of the shield around the LLM for Anima. And it seems like you're doing the same now with the partnership with Perceptron. Something similar. Yeah, you tried to 6,000x cheaper, I think, something like that I saw. So please explain, what are you doing there?
Yeah, so when we ran the policy simulation, one of the components that I actually fed into it because I wanted it in there, it wasn't a fully autonomous discovery, shall we say, was an OSINT intelligence dashboard. So like, whilst I've been watching the situation in Iran, and obviously our business is based in the Middle East, Khalil is out there as well. You know, there's a tool that was circulating called, what is it? I forget the name of it. Something situation, right? And it's essentially a command center. It's a situation room. You see the globe, you see all of the news reports and stories that pop up, where they're coming from, etc. You can see flight logs, everything, right? And it really got me fascinated into open source intelligence. And I was like, okay, running a simulation with static data is good, right? Economic policies don't get drafted that often. GDP data is quarterly and monthly, so there's a cadence there. But what about the shock factors, right? What about what's literally just happened? There was a fantastic national strategy for AI in the UAE as like this talent hub, about this destination where, you know, it's going to absolutely thrive and flourish. And I still do believe that's the case. But I think the general global sentiment around the Middle East being a safe environment now has shifted dramatically, right? And we're seeing the effects of this real time. So I thought Anima needs to see the effects of this real time. I don't need a policy for what the world was 8 weeks ago. I need a policy for today. I need a policy for right now. So every time a news story comes in, we built Anima built on our direction this open source intelligence framework. And then when we were speaking with Perceptron, without leaking too much out of the bag of what we're trying to do with them, I think you guys know what Perceptron do, right? It's live real-time data aggregation and data feeds, data pipelines. It's the data infrastructure of a decentralized data network. And then it got us thinking, like, well, again, even just in the very core of the cognitive process, forget the policy simulations and the forecasting side of things. What about the real-time knowledge structures? We as people, like, we've been breaking down a lot around neurocognitive architecture and neuroscience and how people think. And I realized that there's a massive gap in how we come to reason against things. And there is a constant barrage, especially in 2026, there is a constant barrage of information that hits us all the time, every day. It's not just me and you and our views, and there's no external sort of interaction. And it's not just web search, right? There is data that gets given to us without us trying to find it. You know, someone says something to you, oh, did you see that report the other day? Or, did you see that Claude just did this, right? And it's this constant give and take of data and information. We are a data relay, right, between each other, between humans. Since the dawn of time, the word of mouth has been the fastest way to spread information until the internet. So we're looking at how do we build that sort of data relay infrastructure around Anima as an agent, and then other agents as well, where they are pushing and pulling data and information between each other real time, live, 24/7. And how does that affect and process the cognitive architecture of the agent, you know? And how do you look at like the value of that data? How do you give the agent the ability for critical discourse, mixture of adversaries? You know, Agent 7 just sent me a poll of information from the Perceptron network. I need you to run a mixture of adversaries to essentially work out whether this data is valuable to me or not. So like now you can see where all of these little modules have started to build into something that is way bigger than the sum of its parts. So that's kind of like, yeah, where we're heading towards with Perceptron. We're still early stage. Like obviously everything is research.
So instead of training AI constantly, you're letting it evolve continuously. Is that
continuous evolution? Yeah. And I think since the very beginning, it's very weird. It's like almost prophetic. Is we came up with these names and these words, and we were just at the very early infancy of even understanding the concepts of them. But like when you look at our initial research that we did in like March of last year, you'll see that we said dynamic self-evolution. We called all of these things out way before we even got to the position of it. Before the technology was capable of being able to do these things, we were already thinking about it. But now it's like we've spent 12 months thinking about it and testing and playing around and waiting for the technology to catch up to a point where we can actually implement it in the real world. And now we're kind of at that stage. So yeah, we genuinely believe that the model race is somewhat over, or it's going to be over in the next 12 to 18 months. We're going to see somewhat of a plateau. I don't know if that plateau happens in 18 months or whether it happens in 36 or 4 or 5 years, but exponential growth has a decay rate, right? So you cannot be vertical forever. There is forever and infinitely in every single exponential market a curvature, you know, and this will happen with the power of models. You can't just throw more compute, more parameters and get 10% increases. It's the same as Bitcoin. It's the halving process, right? It will get to a point where a $1 billion training cycle will equal 0.1% growth in terms of the cognitive capabilities. So instead of waiting for that to happen or trying to enter that race to essentially a zero-sum game, open source will catch up, you know, and the AI models that we have now will spawn their own AI models. And we believe that the real power play, the real way to kind of dominate in this space is look at how do you create self-learning architectures, and is there a way to get that to market before the other guys that are looking at this from somewhat a different view, more, I won't say narrow view, but it's like, if we just get our model big enough, then it will be good enough to be able to train the next version of itself. And then we can just keep on doing this loop and this perpetuating system. That's still a cool response feedback loop. What we're looking at is a always on 24/7 cognitive architecture that dynamically evolves its weights based on the interactivity that it has with its environment, with users, with itself. And the only way you can do that really is with live, dynamic, active data, which is where Perceptron kind of comes in.
So are you guys like making this system for Perceptron that Perceptron can use it on their clients, or are you making it for yourselves? So how do I need to see this then?
Yeah, it's a collaboration. At the moment, we see an inherent value in what they're doing. They're super like excited about what we're doing and interested in it. And I think over the last, I would say a couple of months, it's just been an exploration of like, okay, how do these two things work? And it was a back and forth. And we were trying to think about it, and it was like, well, we always need data. Like data is fantastic. It's the lifeblood of intelligence. So there must be something. And then the self-learning discovery happened, and I was like, now it makes sense. Like now I get it. I see it. This is what we need to look at going forward. How we commercialize that, how it works in terms of is this a service that you access through Perceptron? Is this a service that you access through Kaiko? Is this something that you see emerge as a consumer, like a micro app inside the Arc? Like probably all three, to be honest. We'll build it, we'll test it, we'll benchmark it, and then we'll look at how do we implement. Right? I can see it being used in the enterprise system and just being like more of a key component in the architecture that makes Anima and makes our agentic system what it is.
Nice, because Perceptron is, of course, co-founded by Peter from House of Crypto. So there's a strong link between Kaiko and Peter.
Yeah, he's been super supportive of us from the beginning, right? I think he's interested in founders that are trying to do something different, you know, and we have some friends in common. You know, there's some guys that are working with Perceptron that we've known for the last, or specifically Kay is known for well over 7-8 years, and I've known for I think about 5 years. Really good people. They know what they're doing when it comes to go to market and activations and stuff like that. So I'm super bullish on what's going to come from Perceptron, and obviously Peter as well is a legend in the game. So yeah, it's great to have people like that are in our corner. You know, as well, we spoke to Mark from Aethir the other day. He was really excited to hear like all of the progress. We hadn't had a chance to catch up in a couple of months, and now there is something on the horizon for us and Aethir as well, which you'll probably see pretty soon. We're going to move fast on it. We've got a conversation
because you'll need compute.
Yes, that's one part of it, but there's other things as well that you'll see as public announcements from both of us. So yeah, there's a lot happening now. You know, this has been a catalyst on all fronts. It's super exciting.
Great, man. So is there anything else you want to share, or are we going to the community questions?
No, I think that's it, man. I mean, I'll save some. We've already covered so much, but there's still so much uncovered, and we'll save some for the next one.
Yeah, man. Let's do some community questions if we have any. Let me see. Do you calibrate the adversarial pressure, or just let it come to its own conclusion?
It's an algorithmic framework, so it is fine-tunable. You can change the parameters of the pass rate or what counts as a concession or, you know, a valid attack. But the system that we've built is basically trained around Lloyd's of London's risk models that they use, a bunch of quantitative statistical analysis systems, and some open source models like Times FM that Google's released quite recently is like it's beating every benchmark on time series forecasts. So we're like, well, let's use this stuff. You know, if it's out there, it's free and it's available, then let's see how good it is. And it's phenomenal, to be honest. So yeah, that's like the architecture of it. But yeah, it's fine tunable. You know, this is why we wanted to open source it, because we were like, we've seen a configuration that works, but maybe someone else pulls it from GitHub, starts playing around with it, and finds something that we didn't even think of.
Great. So I have a next one. Have you seen any surprising failure modes with Mixture of Adversaries like groupthink?
No, we've seen the complete opposite, which is really novel to see. Is like, if you go through the discourse list, so there's like the main view of it where you can see the agents kind of spawn into these markets and start to attack each other and all of that. But then when you go into the discourse, you start to see the arguments for and against and how they're actually arguing against each other. And I was fascinated with the level of depth in terms of the responses that they were giving. But yeah, it's actually a mitigation system against groupthink, right? It creates the forced pressures of critical discourse, because if you can't defend your thesis, then the agent has an inherent survival bias in it, right? It gets rewarded for succeeding. There's a higher reputational component that it gets given. It gets given these things that it's like, I need to achieve these. And if I continuously fail at being able to prove my thesis correctly, or I keep on getting like attacked, then I'm not going to last very long in this ecosystem. So yeah, there's this inherent survival pressure system that comes from it.
So, and I have another question from our TG group. Hey guys. Yeah, okay. It's about Pudgy Penguins. Khalil mentioned Pudgy Penguins like months ago, I think. And they're asking, what are you going to do with it? Is it for the ARC? Is it for Kaiko? What's up?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, those guys are obviously Kay was the CEO of ArtStyle for a few months, right, as an interim CEO, and he's been part of that group since before ArtStyle even had a brand or a name. And yeah, I've been a member for a couple of years as well. There's a lot of heavy hitters in that group, right? There's a lot of people from a lot of these projects, and I won't say his name just in case he doesn't want us to, but one of the guys from that team was in there. We've had like 5 conversations over the last couple of months, all that have been mostly centered around activations IRL, because that's what they do, right? They have these big events, they have these big parties. It's always centered around token or Singapore or all of these things. And we had big ambitions. We had big ambitious plans for token 2049 in Dubai. It got cancelled, right? You can't be doing these things in the middle of a war. So we're still in conversation with them, but it may have to wait until the geopolitical situation kind of calms down a bit. Because there's other things outside of just physical event stuff, but the activation itself needed to be involved with one of those events. So
does that mean Singapore?
Potentially Singapore now, yeah, it could be. Like Dubai was going to be the one because we had so much that was supposed to happen around that period of time. We've also discussed the accelerator, right, and this idea of a decentralized AI ecosystem. We spent 7-8 months building that out, got everything signed, approved, agreed, ready to go, ready to make a big splash. And then literally the week that we were supposed to start really publicly talking about it, the war happened. So there's a few parts of our strategy that we had to be dynamic and pivot on, but they're still there. It's just we need to wait for the world to be in a bit of a better place.
So then there was a podcast. Yeah, I remember the podcast as well, guys. Yeah, in a podcast, Khalil also talked about ICP. Is there some news about that? Is there anything to say about that?
Yeah, so we showed them some of the stuff we were working on. They loved it. They don't do any grant programs or anything like that. And they also sometimes invest, but not really. But we were looking at it from an investment perspective, and we were looking at it from how can we leverage the infrastructure that they've built, because we're very keen on being able to use privacy focused architecture, right? Because it's a belief of ours. But I think the technical debt, the cost of actually porting everything over, because it's not that easy to be able to integrate and just switch out our entire back-end infrastructure. But yeah, we're still in contact with them. In fact, Kay said to me today, it was like, oh, ICP, we haven't spoken to them in a while. Like, let's put something in the calendar. So yeah, hopefully we have some more information on how that goes in the next few weeks. But it's not like part of a big part of the roadmap and the plan at this stage.
So what can we expect for the roadmap and the plan in the coming few months?
Unfortunately, I had to take it down because Anima
I had to ask, man.
yeah, too good at her job. But basically, where our roadmap is right now is very, very heavy focus on fundraising based on the technical IP that we've obviously uncovered. We are in conversations with people that are very, very close with guys like the leading teams at Anthropic. We're speaking to people that are working at the highest points of government. I mean, that's not necessarily very new for us, but these are new governments, not just the UAE now. We're looking at like implementations through Europe. We're looking at global organizations that aren't necessarily tied to any single government. I can't really say anything else. And it's going to be a research driven couple of months. Like, I think our plan is to showcase how impactful and effective Anima is across so many different sectors, across so many different fields, and showcase that it's not just a one-trick pony, but when you apply self-learning architectures to anything that you want to kind of grow, develop, or build or execute in, this trumps everything. This dominates everything. You're going to see us releasing benchmarks, and then we just spoke to a guy today, and I think this is going to move pretty fast actually. So hopefully we can talk about this maybe even as soon as next week. But he is currently holding the IP rights to, I think he said like 30 different TV shows and sports teams. And he's like, we need to do something with it. We love what you guys are doing. Let's see how we can work together on this. We're going to have a call either tomorrow or Monday, put together a proposal and a partnership agreement, MOU, NDA, and then we'll probably announce something around how that's going to work. But yeah, he was very excited about what we could do together, and so were we. So it's really a focus on partnership acquisition and research and publishing research pushing more open source content out there. Obviously, the art guys are doing their stuff and their TGE soon. I think once that's done, we're going to see sort of an uptick on the Kaiko side as well. I think both projects are inherently quite closely related, right? So I think that any success that those guys have is gonna kind of help push us up as well. And yeah, we'll see what happens from there. But right now, there's 3 key things that we're looking at. One is policy research for the UAE national strategy. One is just the overall development of Anima and the self-learning systems. And the second is looking at enterprise deployments of this and looking at seeing if we can get anywhere from 20 to 40 clients signed up for it in the next 3 to 4 months.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds like a lot even. Yeah.
It's crazy. There's so much going on. Like this is the other thing as well. Sometimes we'll be like, oh yeah, we're talking to Pudgy, we're talking to ICP, etc. When we have one thing that we've never had as a problem is a pipeline, right? An opportunity of what do we want to do? It's like being able to critically assess, okay, what can we do? Because we're still only 5 people, right? We're a small team. We have Anima, who is like 50 people. We're cool, but there's only so much we can do. So we have to critically assess all of these opportunities as they come in and go, look, you know what, I think the UAE national strategy is the one where we put our chips, man. I have a feeling about that. And we operate on vibes a lot. And it's just like, let's pursue that and see where that goes, because I think that's going to be something that's really, really huge for us.
Yeah, man. And you guys have so much energy, in your company. It's crazy, man. You're like a mad inventor. You're just inventing all day long.
Yeah.
Khalil, I think he never loses his phone. You know, his phone is always in his hands. Yeah, man. It's like you guys, you have a great drive, man. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yes. We complement each other nicely, right? He is a crazy genius in his own right, from how he builds these networks and all of these opportunities for us. Yeah, grateful.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. If you talk to Khalil and you just say one thing, you don't mean anything by it. He says, I know someone for that. You know, it's just great. Yeah. Look, thanks for today, man. And I'm sure we'll do one in the near future again. I hope everyone's questions are answered. Yeah, of course, it's a little bit early on the day, so most people will watch it tonight. But just want to let everybody know that if you have questions, you can still ask them in the TG, or we'll just ask them next time here on the live stream.
Yeah, I've got a meeting straight after this, but then I'll be in the TG group over the next couple of hours. So
okay, thanks, Jesse.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.